Welcome to Around the Campfire. Thank you for joining us for our latest episode focused on SEO and content strategy. I'm Jaimie Somlai, Marketing Director at Northwoods, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Alex Boston, one of our extremely talented digital strategists. So if you've watched previous episodes of Around the Campfire, you know that we kick off all of our episodes with a little bit of personal trivia about our guests. And so, Alex, you're a Wisconsin newbie, I guess I should say. So, having just moved to Milwaukee from Iowa not all that long ago, where you worked at the University of Iowa, helping to kind of manage their digital presence and got a ton of experience refining all of your exceptional SEO and content strategy skills, which we're really grateful to be the beneficiary of. So thank you for moving from Iowa to Wisconsin. And of course, our higher ed clients are very grateful for that as well. But I guess I'm curious, like, what is like the thing that surprised you the most so far about Wisconsin, and how does it kind of differ from your days in Iowa?
Well, I think in general, just I moved here because of Milwaukee. Milwaukee was the biggest surprise. I had
Nice.
no idea. I had always kind of jokingly dismissed it a little bit. I'm from Chicago,
Okay.
and I'd always kind of thought of it as a little brother city. I admit that I was a little bit haughty in that way, that I kind of looked down a little bit on Milwaukee, and I was way wrong. As soon as I visited here for the first time, because my parents live nearby, I just fell in love with it, and so did my partner,
Awesome.
and then we decided that we were going to move here to be closer to my family as well. And I've loved every minute of it. Being here is great, and the state is just beautiful. I mean, we visited here all the time, but
Yeah.
there's so much great natural stuff to get out and go and do. And Iowa had very, very little of that. So
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
that's been the biggest value add. And it's just been
Nice.
wonderful to be able to go hang out at the lake and stuff like that. So we're happy. We're very
That's
happy.
great. Oh, we're so happy that you guys are here. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's funny because I'm from the Chicago area as well, and I never thought about Milwaukee. And the only time I ever thought about Milwaukee was to say I had the same perception as you. It's like, oh, it's a teeny tiny little city. It's just kind of
Right. Yeah.
up in Wisconsin doing its thing. But I went to school at Marquette, and then I realized Milwaukee's amazing. So same kind
Right.
of
Right.
experience. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it so much. And
Mhm.
we're very happy that you came here and chose Northwoods. So, yay.
So we are too.
Nice, nice. So, I have one more very, very important question. This is the most important question of
Mm.
this entire episode for you. And you probably know what it is because you've seen some of our other episodes,
Hmm.
but you know how we love our s'mores here at Northwoods.
I
It's
do.
definitely our signature snack, and we have a whole kind of giveaway around s'mores for clients and things. So we take it very seriously. We take our s'mores very seriously. So the question I always ask every guest is, what chocolate do you like in your s'mores? Because there are so many different options and everyone kind of has their own preference.
Mhm. I like it the darker the better.
Oh,
I
okay.
want it to be like just like velvety dark and a little bit bitter. I kind of
Ooh,
like because it kind of offsets the marshmallow a little bit. I'm not a big fan of
nice.
like super sugary. Um,
Okay.
so I think that's the way to do it personally. Make it like bite a little bit, like make it hurt
Ah.
a little bit with the bitterness. That's what I kind of like.
Well, that would be a memorable s'more for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is there a
it's a good
particular
combo.
dark chocolate brand that you like more than others, or just kind of any
I
dark
just look for
chocolate?
like the greatest percentage of I
Okay.
can find.
Oh yeah, those are
Um,
well, you get up there. Those are very bitter. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it tastes like just like eating black coffee. Like that's kind of what I like sometimes. So yeah,
All right, good. Now we know what to bribe you with when we need
yeah,
something,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, now that I'm hungry for s'mores, we'll keep going now. We'll keep going. I won't stop to make one. But we'll get into kind of the real important gist of why we're here, which is the SEO and content strategy topic. And I'm so excited to be able to pick your brain on this a little bit because you are very experienced in this area. So I guess just to start, talking about SEO at a high level, and I know in talking to you that you are a very strong proponent of kind of old school SEO principles, that are tried and true. And so what are some of those kind of oldie but goodie, I guess, for lack of a better term, strategies that you feel still apply today that marketers should really continue to focus on?
Yeah, I feel like it's really easy to get distracted by new tactics, especially nowadays. There's a lot of flashy stuff that's coming out around AI, a lot of tools that spawn out around that, and a lot of different ways of approaching SEO, but ultimately it all comes back to different ways of servicing the same fundamental goal, which is to try and provide authoritative and helpful content, to try and establish your authority in a given topic, and then to make that something that your intended audience is searching for. So it's kind of that index point of understanding what your audience is actively looking for, not focusing too much on just this is what I want to say. I don't need to do keyword research. I'm just going to put out my message and hope it works. But like actually trying to reverse engineer from what you think your audience is looking for, and really trying to emphasize the phrase I use is serving the audience as much as
Mm.
possible. That the idea is that you want to find them where they are in search and just create good content for them. And in that way, that's been true of good SEO forever and good UX and good content strategy. That just we always just want to make sure we're providing in our website experiences what the user is looking for when they're looking for it. And so I don't think, even with AI and all those tools, I don't think they've really changed the tactics all that much. Or I should say they have changed the tactics. It's just that the core goal hasn't really changed. And the guiding principles are still very much how can we create good content that people want to engage with. So I always advocate for, slowing down and not diving into a new shiny tactic too quickly and making sure that it serves strategic goals and that we're, staying focused on what we're trying to do always.
That makes so much sense. So it kind of leads me into my next question, which is really about creating that content strategy and SEO strategy up front and how important that is. And especially when it comes to website redesigns, I think that's one area that often gets overlooked. And I know we
Mhm.
always say that, content or the lack thereof is what's going to stop your project from launching on time when it comes to a
Mhm.
website redesign in particular. So, how can marketers kind of make sure that that content strategy gets baked into their website redesign process? And like, what do you recommend as a way to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's something that does get passed over a lot because people want to get going. They want to get moving on a web project, especially, and they don't want to churn up budget or time
Right.
on mapping this stuff out beforehand. Ultimately, it will save you so much more time and budget to do the content strategy first. And for that, I would really say the best thing you can invest in is understanding your current audience and trying to start with the bare minimum of what is your target, who are you trying to reach, and what are you trying to get them to do. It really comes down to those two questions as the most fundamental of any content strategy, in my opinion. It's just who are you reaching and what do you want them to do? And then you start from there and you start answering those questions more specifically and in more nuanced ways. And then you just look for the tools that can help you understand your answers to those two questions better. And then what tactics can you use from there to try and bring those people in more? And there's a lot of ways to do that, to understand your user. There's a lot of different UX research tools that we can use to understand how people are interacting with the site currently and what we need to change about it to make it more effective and driving content further. We can look at analytics, we can track events and make sure that we're getting the right metrics to justify our choices that we're making and that we're focusing back on those goals and how well the site is satisfying those. And then we can make sure that we're doing keyword research as we get things started so that we're keeping in mind like what does the actual content have to focus on topic wise. If we're going to be, are we going to have a blog? Are we going to, how are we going to go about reaching that group of people who are coming to us through organic search? And what do they look like? And who are they searching for? And what are they searching for? So there's kind of a bunch of different angles that you can come at to sort of start answering the questions. And you don't necessarily have to do all of them, but they can all be helpful in just shaping that, okay, what content needs to live on the site and what structure should that take based on what we know about our audience. That creates such a good roadmap. And I just find that the more you invest in that at the front, the less likely you're going to get hit somewhere during the actual web content development process. That's like, we don't have what we need here, or we have a change that we've made, or we don't even really know how we're going to go about getting this done. And so the content just goes into limbo, or the content in the project just goes into limbo. I just think
Yeah.
it saves you so much time in the long run to make the investment up front. So I'm always an advocate for, let's
Yeah.
slow down. Let's know as much as we can before we dive in.
Yeah, that is such excellent advice, and kind of just going back to the strategy basics. And it's so easy to get caught up in like the sexiness of the site design and what that
Mhm.
looks like, and you kind of forget about the underpinning strategy component of it and lean into the design aspect. So as marketers, we need to your point, slow down and kind of get back to that basic strategy approach.
Yeah. And if you're someone who's in the role where you're the one owning that project, on whether it's an internal project or you're working with an agency like Northwoods, advocating for taking that time internally, I think is a really important part of that person's role, to kind of make sure that we're not just delivering a project, we're not just checking a box, but that it
Right.
actually is going to be an investment that you can see return on, and
Hmm.
that the people who are pushing for the project, the stakeholders maybe who really want to see this happen, can also feel good about when things are
Yes.
done.
Yeah, that is so true. And I really like your point too about, it's going to cost you less to do it right up front than it is
Mhm.
later on, because once you realize, if you don't invest in that strategy up front, I'm sure you've seen this with several client projects too. If they skip the strategy, their project isn't as successful, and then they have to go back and kind of redo that, what should be an initial step in the whole process.
Oh yeah, that's if you get to the point where the site goes
Yeah.
live.
Right.
Like, there's many projects that you see where if they don't do the strategy up front, something happens along the way where we didn't know what target we were trying to hit, or they didn't know what
Mm,
target they were trying to hit, either or. And it's just, what comes out is just not working. And it's just not actually in building on or enhancing the topic of the site. All we're really doing then is just reskinning what's already there, which is, again, like you were saying, that focus on design and layout
yeah,
instead, when both need to work together really closely.
right.
Everybody wants to see prototypes and
Mm,
layouts and stuff like that, but I get the interest in having those deliverables kind of come out of the process. But
right.
those strategy documents can be just as powerful in helping people understand what the project is meant to do. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Plus, it can be a negative for your brand too, if you're putting something out that isn't as
yeah,
strategically thought through. As a diehard brand strategist, that hurts me to think about putting
yeah,
something out that hasn't been strategically or well thought through, just from a brand perception standpoint as well. So,
yeah. I mean, if
yeah.
you release something that just the UX is just not there, and it's just really
Yes.
created a worse experience for you, your users are already sensitive to change. So
Right.
the minute that something changes that they're used to looking for in a certain place, they're gonna kind of, their hackles go up immediately. So the less you've thought about that transition and how you're going to make
Mm,
that more natural for them, the more likely you are to run into users who are not happy and
yeah.
maybe
Not
stop
good.
engaging altogether because of it.
Right, which of course that's the worst possible outcome.
Right,
So,
exactly.
oh, well, that's really, really good insight. One other question I had for you, and this is switching gears a little bit, obviously still on the SEO topic, but I thought this was really fascinating that you had written a blog post for us recently about SEO clusters and how
Mhm.
valuable they can be in driving organic traffic to your site. And obviously kind of stems off the whole strategic discussion, because obviously you need some strategy involved in coming up with what these clusters should be and what you're going to write about and all of that. But what exactly are those clusters, and when should marketers consider pursuing that as a tactic?
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful tactic in certain cases. So if you have a topic that you want to cover and that you really want to try and establish authority relative to a particular set of keywords or a particular subject that you'd like to really cover in the search space, what you can do is create a cluster of articles. So they're usually best served as a blog, but not always. There are people who do them on static page content too. It's just, that's going to be a bit harder to make something that's going to just work on an evergreen level, because these are
Mm,
going to be very keyword focused articles. We usually recommend somewhere between 6 or 10 articles in a cluster. And then the reason we call it a cluster is because they'll all link back to rather, a central article at the middle, either an article or a static page that you just want to feed all of the SEO authority that those articles gather up into that page. So let's say you have one product area or product category that you really want to emphasize in search. There's a lot of volume for it, and you want to try and catch more of it. You can focus on that and write a bunch of kind of related articles, all with keywords that are relevant to that product category. And then you can link from those articles back to either a central article that you want to use as kind of the main landing page for searches about that product category, or back to an existing static page. We've done both, and both have shown impact. So it's just about using articles to kind of throw out these tentacles into search and kind of reach for additional keywords in the area, and then funnel that traffic back towards the actual main landing page that you want to have ranking. And again, that can be a blog article that houses kind of links out to all of these articles that you're going to be writing as well. Or it can just be a fixed static page that you're driving traffic towards. And that also, not just traffic, but if you optimize then anchor text for those links. So if you make the actual text that's in those links optimized for keywords as well, then you can send another very strong cue to Google that this landing page that you're sending people to is relevant to this specific keyword that you're using in the link text. So it's just a really good way of creating a web of things that reach out to other search terms and then drive back to your actual conversion point or whatever the case may be for your site. So it's a really, really good tactic, especially if you have one particular focus or subject area with maybe a broad set of keywords that are within that subject, and you want to capture them all. But funnel them into a single place.
Nice. I like how you describe it as kind of a web too. I think that that makes it very understandable to people that you're, and like you said, signaling to Google that you're an expert in this area by developing all of that content that then ties back to each other.
That's right. Yeah, that's the important point too, is that you, as you write these articles, takes that as a cue as well, that this is something that you have some authority on, and especially once you start generating traffic. Once people start reliably clicking on those and visiting them, and you can certainly distribute them yourself through your own channels, but once you get traffic through organic search, you'll start seeing some recognition that you are contributing to the knowledge base within this topic, basically.
Nice. So you've seen that be a really successful tactic for some of the clients that you work with.
Yes, we've done both content cluster focused strategies and just general one-off articles where we're just trying to go after a specific keyword. Both can work, especially once you've established authority. But for sites that are trying to get noticed for something that maybe they're not yet, investing heavily in one particular focus is a great way to start drawing some attention from search engines. So if you do have a particular, you've done the keyword research, you know what you want to go after, they can be particularly effective there if you're not ranking for those things currently.
Okay, awesome. And that kind of leads me, I should say, to the question of like AI and how AI is being used in helping to develop some of this content. I know you and the rest of the team and we at Northwoods generally get a lot of questions from clients about how should I be using AI to develop content? Like what are best practices? And I know, you've even written about things like programmatic SEO and that using that as a strategy, and that may not be good for everybody and you have to be really careful. But how do you typically kind of steer clients when it comes to those questions around AI use?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that AI can be used for. And I think it's a very useful tool. It makes things more efficient. I think the average productivity savings, if you're using it effectively, is somewhere around 20 to 30%. For a lot of SEO tasks, that's definitely proven true in my experience. It can make things faster. It can't make things better necessarily. It's never going to write content, for example, to the same quality as a human. But if you do have kind of a more nuts and bolts, we just need to get this done article that could just do with a little bit of quick content on it, then I would say, you can engage with ChatGPT and other large language learning models and let them generate your content at least as a first draft. Just throw it out in first draft format. You really need a human eye on it to revise it and make it human, because it will be like, I've gotten to the point now where I can pick up when an article is AI generated. Google can
Okay.
definitely do it as well if I can do it.
Ah.
So it's something that you want to make sure you're tweaking things in a way that makes it a bit more human, and makes the words flow a bit more fluidly. And also just it doesn't really know how to optimize for keywords. So you're still going to
Yeah.
need an SEO who knows where to put the keywords, how to place them within the article, where they need to be, and how to use them in a way that's not going to feel spammy and artificial.
Okay.
So that's for content specifically. But there are ways to generate large amounts of content that aren't super spammy and low quality. It's just they have to, again, be very strategic. There's
Hmm.
certain cases where it's useful, like if you're trying to generate a bunch of landing pages that you might want to get to rank. There are tools that allow you to just generate an entire web page based on a template. They're useful as long as they're heavily managed. As long as you have a very clear vision for, this is what we're trying to create with these, and you can very heavily templatize the content, then it can
Okay.
work. But again, you got to have somebody involved who has both the technical know-how and the SEO expertise to make sure that it's going to work and that the pages that it's generating are not going to be a bad user experience. So there's a lot of useful tools. AI in particular is it saves a lot of time, but you still need a human hand very much in SEO.
Yeah, the world has not been taken over by robots quite
No,
yet.
yeah, not even from an SEO perspective, not even close. I think there are some
No.
people who advocate for it more than others, but my take is just that it's a great efficiency tool and it can speed things up. It can make you capable of doing more in a month and making more progress. It's not going to replace anybody.
Yeah. Good. Job security for us,
Yeah,
right?
it's yeah, I
For
do
a
have a bit
while
of a
longer.
bias in this regard where I want it to be that way.
Yeah.
But also I genuinely think we were very open-minded at Northwoods when AI started coming out. Our whole team got together and started talking about how is this going to change our processes and how can we use this to, transfer that value onto clients.
Yeah.
And what we eventually arrived at was it's beneficial to us. It saves a little bit of time, but it's not transformative yet.
That's a great way of describing it.
Yeah,
Efficiency,
it's
but
it's
not
not
totally transformative at this
yeah,
point.
it's not going to blow
Yeah.
up the world the way that we thought it might. Or at least
Right.
the way it sounded like it might.
It sure did sound like that at
Yeah,
first.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely did. So when you're talking about, creating lots of landing pages and things like that using, AI, that's more of that programmatic SEO kind of approach. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
Yeah, that would be considered programmatic as if you're creating a bunch of pages using AI
Gotcha.
tools. There's also a
Okay.
lot of back-end stuff that AI is good for. A
Mm,
lot of stuff around analytics. I love ChatGPT's data analytics tool. You can just input a spreadsheet and it will help you visualize it in interesting ways and break it down, and you can use its AI tools to search within the data set for
that's cool.
certain trends and it can render that for you. So it's basically just a sped up interpretation process that we would go through. So again,
Oh,
there's a lot of efficiency things
right.
that it can help you do. And there's a lot of menial tasks for people who, especially if you're managing a website regularly, if you're somebody who's just in there every day, adding images, optimizing stuff for the site, there's lots of great like image trimming and adjusting tools that don't require photo editors anymore, that are just kind of, you throw it at the AI and it can do a simple one single photo function, for example. I think those little like basic tasks are great for AI and they can save you a lot of time overall.
For sure. Then you don't have to contact your creative team every time you need something, a
Exactly. Yeah.
background removed from an image or something cropped that you can't seem to
Right.
do. Well, yeah, that's
That's
good use.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're excited about for AI is the ways that it creates bandwidth for us to focus on more important things and for us to, get the menial tasks out of the way so we can really
Right.
maximize value to clients and do
Yeah.
the most that we can with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And focus on that strategy that we talked about at the beginning that
Right.
is so critical. Yeah.
Exactly. More bandwidth left
And
for
more,
that. So
right.
we're very happy about that and that
That is
aspect of AI.
awesome. That is awesome. So this question kind of follows along this idea of, efficiency and not necessarily AI, but efficiency. So a lot of businesses that we work with have small marketing teams, not all, some have very large, but a lot of them have, limited number of staff dedicated to marketing, or they might even be one person shops at some organizations as well. And so, as you know, because you live this every day, ongoing SEO optimization and management and content development and content strategy, that's a lot of work. And if
Mm.
you don't have somebody on your team who can be dedicated to that, is it reasonable for a small team to kind of try to take that on themselves? Or would you recommend that that's something that is very ripe for kind of handing off to an external agency to help with, just due to time and, limitations in terms of expertise potentially?
Yeah, I would say true marketing generalists, people who can do every step of that process are getting rarer and rarer. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of specialization just because of how in-depth a lot of those functions are becoming. And the expectations are getting higher for results and stuff too. And the pressure being put on web environments to succeed is a lot higher. And it's just a very important space for a company. And
right.
they want every individual thing, for the most part, to be covered by someone who knows it in and out. And so a one-person team is probably going to struggle a little bit to account for all of those. That doesn't mean there aren't people out there who can handle it. Like there totally
Sure.
are. And I've definitely, spoken with some absolute rock stars within our clients and within, other people that we've worked with. I just think that there's a lot of in-depth knowledge that you can benefit from having somebody who specializes in these different things. Northwoods, I
Yeah.
think we get to proudly claim that we have a lot of generalists here, and I think, but we all have our areas of
Yes.
specialization where we're especially good, but we all kind of know we're all T-shaped in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I was just
Um,
thinking that exact thing, T skills.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're all kind of ready to cover if someone else needs a little bit of help with something, and like
Yeah.
I think that's a really beneficial thing to have as well. But also just in general, like I think the extra bandwidth that it can create to focus on, to leave you free to focus on the strategic stuff. We're happy to respond to whatever the strategic goals are, or any, partner worth their salt is going to be happy to work with you when you have a target in
Mm,
mind and you have a firm, like, this is what we need to produce. That's going to make our job so much easier. And so if
right.
you can focus on that and not have to spend your whole day doing keyword research, running
Mm,
screaming frog reports and,
yeah.
looking at things like that and leave that to someone else, I think that's beneficial for everybody, especially if you're a one person shop. But even if there's one section of it that you're just, I'm not sure we really have the bench for it, bringing in somebody to just, supplement that, I think can be really beneficial. It's not that you can't do it. It's just that, maybe leave yourself
Right.
free to focus on other stuff.
Right. I think that's really, really good advice. Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. For sure. I mean, it's really hard, to your point. Not a lot of folks are generalists anymore because everything in
Mhm.
digital has gotten so specialized. And so, there's so much deep experience that's required to be very, very good at it, at a particular aspect of digital marketing. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really, really good advice. So one other thing is kind of going a little bit back to our original discussion about strategy and kind of starting there and everything. But I know one thing we run into a lot too, especially, if you're working on a new site and you're developing, a new content strategy, or maybe you want to start a blog or something like that. I think one thing that we as marketers and just generally as humans overlook, because we get so excited about just getting something done and up and running, is kind of this ongoing maintenance or management of content, and
Mhm.
making sure that there's a plan in place to keep that content up to date, that you're, adjusting keywords, that you're always going back and reviewing. So how, I mean, I guess, can you talk a little bit more about just how critical it is to have kind of a game plan in place for content maintenance and management?
Yeah, so critical, and you're absolutely right. So frequently overlooked. The content strategy and maintaining it and checking up on it is just one step, basically. Like there's the moment of launch is not really this definitive moment in the way
Yeah.
that, a lot of it can seem like you're publishing something almost like you're, setting a book out into the world that's just going to be on something you can't edit down the line. But the advantage of websites is that that's not true. We can it's a living thing, and maintaining that and changing things and getting up something that works for now, and but planning ahead for how are we going to make improvements after that is really such a core element of content strategy. And then setting accountabilities even for who's going to be doing this. And then how frequently do we want to look back at performance? And then how are we going to report on that? How are we going to keep track of how well the site is delivering on its promise and the strategy that we hoped that it would fulfill? All of that is the only way that you have to validate that what you've done is working. And it's also the only way to continue making those improvements as you learn more. So if you don't have that infrastructure in place, what you get is a site that lands that is just, it's only ever going to be the thing that it was the moment that it was launched. And then it's never going to improve from there. Because at most what you get is, okay, someone's maybe responsible for a blog once a month, but nobody's doing research behind it. So it's just they're picking the topic out of thin air. They're throwing it out there and hoping it gets engagement. Thinking through all of those things makes it so that you can actually get the return on investment, because you just won't if you throw something out and don't touch it again, or don't have someone that's regularly making updates, and not just for content purposes and UX purposes, but for SEO as well. Search engines look for that a site is being maintained. And so if pages get updated regularly and stuff like that, that's a good signal. They take that seriously. It's like, this is a site that we can trust as authoritative because it's being updated. So it's good for every dimension of web experience that you have this planned out, and that you understand who's going to be taking care of what at which points in the process. And then even build out a calendar for when you're going to go back and audit these things, and how frequently are we going to repeat. Put meetings on your calendar a year in advance if you have to make sure that we have a deliverable for an SEO audit again in a year, and that we can go back and after launches, when sites have all sorts of broken links and messed up issues and things, it's inevitable. We try and prevent it, everyone does, but inevitably on launch you're going to notice things that are broken. And that's like the most important time, that month after launch, to make sure that we've got someone who is covering all these issues, who's, doing quality control on the site, basically. And so having all of that, accounting for that first month and, the first year of the site's existence, really, after launch date, is, I think, a really important step in the process, the initial planning process.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, everything you said is just so dead on and so smart. And I guess, how is there a frequency that you typically tell our clients, like, okay, if you go live with your blog on this day, is it 3 months you should take a look at it again, 6 months, a year? Do you have kind of a general sense of when people should be relooking at content?
Yeah, I would say if you've had an article that's been up for a year, that's definitely worth looking at, to making sure that it's performing well and that it's going for the keywords that you want. I would say at least once a year would be a good opportunity to look at updates. Doesn't mean you have to go and update every article, but just make sure that it's performing well. Once a year is also a great time for just a comprehensive SEO deep dive. Like, it's the whole site, not just new content, just diving in and picking apart what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
I would really recommend that at least once a year. If you can do it more, do it more. Every 6 months would be great too. In terms of once we've made a change to the site that we think could have traffic impact or SEO impact, I would say give it at least 6 to 8 weeks before you go and look back to see what its impact was. Sometimes we make changes in keyword optimizations that 2 weeks later, Google re-indexes and it starts, making an immediate impact, but often it takes a little longer. And that's the thing about SEO is we have many clients who don't see any impact for their efforts for the first year, where it's just, you are slowly maybe crawling up in a couple rankings, and maybe you're seeing the stuff you post and start picking up a couple rankings. That's totally fine. That's within the bounds of kind of a foundational first year if you've never invested in SEO. It's going to take a while. Yeah, that's why I don't advocate for just checking up constantly on it.
Yeah.
As
tempting as that is.
Yeah, exactly. You want to start seeing those returns right away. And you want to start seeing, okay, how did that thing I just did? I want to know that it worked. It can take a lot of time for that stuff to register. And certainly monthly reports are a great idea. Pull them really quickly together and just pull keywords out and where are you sitting. But don't obsess over it. Focus mostly on making good
Yeah.
content. And then you can look at after the fact where that starts to land over time. And then don't be afraid too to just take, a chance with some content, experiment with articles in the meantime, and or with, changes to your static pages, make those changes and just make sure you record the date they were done. And then again, give it, 2 to 3 months before you make a call, unless you literally see it's dropped off a cliff or something, like
Okay.
you've done something that looks really bad on paper. Like give it some time, basically,
Okay.
unless you see a cratering of traffic.
Yeah. I love how you just brought everything back full circle to just developing really good content. That's really what it's about. It's that, old
Always.
school, oldie but goodie, that we started with.
Yep. Always. It's about
Yeah.
at all levels of the web experience, it's about serving the audience first. So it's about
Yeah.
who they are, what they're looking for, and when they're looking for it, and then designing your site for them, basically, not just focusing on the messages we want to get out
Right.
or the like cool interactive visual elements that we really like. Because obviously we could all, like, all of us are web people, we get things, we see things online and we go, that's really cool, that looks great.
Right.
But often when you really break those things down, there's either a technical reason or a user experience reason why it doesn't quite work in a
Mhm.
lot of the flashiest instances. Not always true,
Yes.
but in a lot of them it is.
A lot of them for
So
sure.
it's just making the
Yeah.
substance of your site work. And
Right.
and that I think is just the best thing that you can do for your users and for you.
Absolutely. That is a perfect place to end, a great message to end on.
This has been
Yeah.
a good conversation. I'd
It's been
say
really
that
great.
serving the audience is the idea that I constantly repeat. So I'm just like, as long as people take that away, I'm good.
Perfect. That is a great takeaway. Absolute perfect takeaway. So good place to end. Well,
Sure.
thank you so much, Alex, for joining me. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and this did not disappoint at all. This is such an important topic, and you are a wealth of knowledge on it. So thank you for taking the time
Of course.
to talk to us about it. And thank you to everyone for tuning in and joining us. So keep an eye out for our next Around the Campfire episode, which should be coming in the next couple of weeks. And if you'd like to check out some of our previous episodes, you can visit our YouTube channel or our website at nwsdigital.com/around the campfire. So thanks again, Alex, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. And we will see you all around the campfire again very soon. Take care.